Welcome back. I hope you're doing great. As a part of this video, we'll understand some of the important phases in ETL testing. So what are the important testing phases and why do we call them so? So when we look at the whole landscape of ETL or a data warehouse, it would involve the sources from which we are getting the data, and it would involve the staging area, and it would involve the data warehouse. It would involve the data marts, and it would involve the reports. Across all these different stages of building the data warehouse, building the data marts, and deriving the reports, these different stages need to be tested, and all of them would be tested in important three phases. One is metadata testing. The second one is a end-to-end ETL testing. The third one is a report testing. So different people would call this as a processes, will call this as a categories. So don't get confused. We do have a data moving from source to staging area to data warehouse to data mart, and from there reports are derived. So to ensure that we need to perform the testing across the stages, that would be done in these phases like metadata testing, ETL end-to-end testing, and report testing. If you look at the data warehousing architecture, it would have these things at a high level. Like this is a layer where the databases are sources are there. From there, modeling is done, integration is done, and the data warehouse is built. From there, the mining is done. From there, reports are generated. So the data is moving from here to here, right? As I explained in the earlier slide, the data is moving from sources to data warehouse to data mining and report generation. Now, until the data comes to this data warehouse, we do have a ETL process as indicated here. So at this stage, we'll perform the metadata testing, ETL end-to-end testing, and once the reports are generated, report testing is done. So what exactly is a metadata? To understand that, let us understand what is meta. Meta is something self-referential. Isn't it awesome? So you are referring to one. Meta is something self-referential. What is data? Data is a collection of raw facts. Now then, what is metadata? Metadata is a data about the data. If you look at the table, which has some 5 records and you have 5 columns. This is a data and this is a metadata. Means if you see, this is the data, this is the metadata. These are all metadata. Extending that, metadata also consists of like what is the type of the column, whether it can accept the null values or not, which is the primary key, whether what is the default value it can accept. And all those things will be captured as a part of the metadata. So we have to perform the metadata testing so that the schema of the table is right and the structure of the table is right. If you properly identify the defect at this stage, it will be easy for you to save a lot of time in the future. As a part of the metadata testing, we will verify the definitions of the table in data warehouse, like structure of the tables. We'll verify constraints in the tables and what are the different data types in the table and what are the different definitions of a column and what is the length of the data. So in data type check, we'll verify what are the data types of both source and target tables. In case of constraints, we'll validate all the constraints. It can be primary key constraints or foreign key constraints or as per the specifications in the design document. So when we are defining the columns, we would have defined the column length should be so much, like it may be 15 characters, 20 characters, or 100 characters. So as a part of the data length check, we'll verify whether the columns are having the appropriate length or not. After verifying the metadata, we'll move on to the end-to-end testing. So as you know, in end-to-end testing, the data is moving from source to the data warehouse. From data warehouse, between source, there is a staging area and we have data marts. So we have to validate all that data movement from one place to another place, right? One source to another target. As a part of the data testing, the complete quality of the transform data, which is moved from one place to another place, is validated. As you know, once the data transformation and data integration is done, data warehouse will be loaded with the needed data that need to be validated as a part of the ETL end-to-end testing. So multiple aspects are done as a part of the ETL testing. We'll just cover some of the aspects. Like as a part of the ETL end-to-end testing, we'll see all the data transformations are complying to the business requirements or not. We can do that by using the SQL queries. Once we complete the ETL end-to-end testing, then we will do the report testing. So as you know, the people who are in the decision making positions, they wouldn't have the skill set to write a SQL queries and get the report. That is when we will use their reporting tools like Tableau or SSRS, business objects, and we'll create the reports. But do you think everything will be fine in reports? Not really. Maybe some problems with the data which is being fetched. Maybe there is an issue with the layout. There may be some issue with the placement of the pictures. Those need to be tested, right? That is where report testing comes to picture. Because reports are the basis for the business decisions. If you are not having an appropriate report, your business decisions will go wrong. And we need to have the reports to show us how the projects, how the company is running, what kind of a performance is happening. Reports are used to derive the patterns and insights and present it to the analysts or the management professionals. As a part of the report testing, we'll validate the summary of the report, layout of the report, and whether the calculations and computations are appropriate or not. In order to test the report, we'll perform the proofreading of the report and its data and how the computations are done. Otherwise, how will you do the report testing? So you will go ahead and create a report and perform the proofreading to validate the layout of the report, the way the graphs are placed, the alignment, and the border, and how the computations are done. So in order to validate the computations, we always validate the report generation data against the data in the warehouse, so that the data what we are pulling and the way it is represented is correct in the reports. So as I said, reports are also tested from the GUI perspective, that is graphical user interface. What I mean by that is how the layout of the report, what is the border, and where are we placing the graphs. All those things are validated. So usually we perform the GUI validation or the layout validation manually, but other data validations can be taken through automation tools. Awesome. We understood all the important phases of the ETL testing. Thank you.